If you've been feeling tired, irritated with everything and everyone, and no matter what you do, nothing seems to bring you peace, maybe the problem isn't out there. Ready to hear this? Because the truth is a little uncomfortable. There are things you are doing without even realizing that are sabotaging your own peace. Yes, small habits, invisible ones, disguised as politeness, good intentions, but in practice, they're draining you from the inside out. And the worst part, most people repeat these patterns every day, thinking they're being strong, mature, even enlightened, when in reality they're reacting on autopilot, seeking validation, over-explaining themselves, trying to control everything all the time, and drifting further and further away from the calm they crave. This isn't self-help fluff or cheap mysticism. It's real, and Stoic philosophy has been warning us about this for centuries. In this video, I'm going to show you 12 silent habits that seem harmless, but are the main reasons you stay stuck in a cycle of comparison, guilt, and emotional exhaustion. And the best part? It's not hard to reverse. You just have to start seeing them. And then act with intention. The result, more lightness, more clarity, and a kind of peace that doesn't depend on anyone else to exist. Now tell me, do you have the courage to look at yourself honestly? Because what you're about to discover here could change everything. Some people think transformation needs fireworks, a national broadcast, and a soap opera-worthy plot twist. But the truth is, the biggest changes happen when no one's watching. It's in the silence of the night, after a hard day, that the soul starts sweeping out the forgotten corners. The metaphor of cleaning the house of your soul with the doors closed isn't just poetic. It's a practical call to look inward without an audience, without needing to post it on Instagram. That's where Stoicism teaches. Want inner peace? Start with the cleaning no one sees. Most people are so busy chasing external answers, they forget to listen to their internal questions. And here's the problem with that. They keep collecting guilt, resentment, and comparison, like clutter in a house they think they'll use one day, but they don't. It just weighs them down. And what's curious is, when you stop, breathe, and simply go quiet, not to escape the world, but to actually hear yourself, something shifts. A book that captures this beautifully is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. He's not a Stoic, but he speaks of presence like few others. Reading that book feels like opening a window to your soul. You don't need to disappear from the world to begin this process. Sometimes, all it takes is 15 minutes a day with your phone on airplane mode and a blank notebook in hand. Write down what's bothering you, what's eating at you, what's keeping you up at night. Clarity comes when the mind finds silence, and self-knowledge blooms when we stop trying to fix everything with noise. That small pause may seem insignificant, but its impact is massive. It's like watering a plant that was starting to wilt. Slowly, it comes back to life. And make no mistake, this healing silence also requires courage. The courage to face your own ghosts, to close chapters without applause, and to not wait for anyone's recognition. When change happens at this level, you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Control stops being an obsession, comparison loses its grip, and judgment becomes nothing more than a distant echo. And just like that, without even realizing, you begin to free yourself from one of the greatest invisible prisons of all: the need to always be right. The need to always be right is a burden disguised as a virtue. It looks like strength, but it's actually a prison. How many times have you gotten into arguments that led nowhere just because you wanted the last word? Most people do this without realizing it, as if winning the argument could somehow offer control or validation. But it doesn't. What actually happens is you trade your inner peace for an invisible trophy, and let's be honest, is it really worth it? Those who are trapped in the desire to be right don't truly listen. They just wait for their turn to speak. It creates distance, wears down relationships, and fuels resentment. Stoicism, in its raw and direct wisdom, teaches that it's not about winning debates, it's about mastering yourself. It's more noble to choose silence than to feed into empty fights. Want a practical example? When someone tries to provoke you, instead of firing back, try responding with a simple, "I'll think about that." It's simple, but powerful. You don't give up control. You take it back. The ego loves being right, but self-awareness shows that often it's better to be free than to be right. This applies at work, in friendships, and especially in intimate relationships. That petty fight over who left the light on. It might be more worthwhile to let it go than to turn it into a battlefield. A great example of this is the book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He was an emperor, and even he reflected on how it's not always worth correcting others. Sometimes it's better to lead by quiet example. And when you finally let go of that urge to win, a deep sense of lightness sets in. You stop feeling the need to explain everything. You begin to listen more. Life stops being a boxing ring and becomes a space for growth. That's the moment your mind opens to something far more profound than arguments: empathy. And with empathy comes the ability to see the other, not through comparison, not through defense, not behind a shield. That's where real transformation begins. Comparison is sneaky. It slips in quietly, often while you're scrolling through your phone, and suddenly it feels like everyone else is doing better than you. But what no one tells you is that what you're seeing is just the stage. The backstage remains hidden. In Stoicism, we learn to focus on our own path, because constantly looking to the side makes you stumble on your own journey. Everyone has their own pace, their own timing, their own soil. Trees don't all bloom at once, remember? When we start measuring ourselves against others, we lose our internal compass. That promotion that once would have made you proud now feels small just because someone else bought a new car. That robs your inner peace, creates resentment disguised as admiration, and fuels a false sense of failure. You know the antidote? Self-awareness. Knowing where you were, where you are, and where you want to go. And if you want a practical exercise, try this. Today, list 3 personal wins that have nothing to do with anyone else. Just yours. That's the beginning of a clearer perspective. Comparing yourself to others is like trying to use your neighbor's remote control. It doesn't matter how many buttons you press, nothing's going to work in your house. What actually works is stopping to observe what truly makes sense for you. Have you ever considered that you might be running in a direction you never even wanted, just because everyone else ran that way? A great example of this is the documentary The Social Dilemma, which shows how social media amplifies these comparisons and manipulates our sense of personal worth. But what if, instead of comparing yourself to others, you started being inspired by them without losing focus on yourself? The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. When you understand that each person carries a unique story, it becomes easier to let go of the guilt of not being in the same place. And from there, you can stop justifying so much, take a deep breath, and begin walking your own path with presence. There's a kind of prison we don't even realize we're in, the need to over-explain ourselves, justifying every choice, every silence, every step that strays from what others expect. It's exhausting. And the most ironic part, the ones demanding explanations often aren't even willing to understand. Stoicism teaches that living with integrity means doing what's right, even if no one applauds, and without feeling the need to draw a map for everyone. When you know the why behind your actions, silence becomes protection. A lot of people are afraid of being misunderstood, so they spend their entire lives trying to fill every gap with words. But when you live to please others, you end up forgetting to please yourself. It's that person who says, "I'm not going today, I'm tired," and immediately follows it with a list of justifications, as if being tired on its own wasn't enough. Self-awareness helps break this cycle. A practical exercise: next time you decline something, simply say, "No, thank you." No drama. That's emotional control in motion. Constant justification is guilt dressed up as politeness. It's like asking permission to exist as you are. And let's be honest, no one needs to apologize for being themselves. When you stop justifying, you start choosing more carefully where your energy goes. It's like closing those internal faucets that were constantly dripping. In this case, silence isn't a mission, it's affirmation. It shows that your inner peace is more valuable than outside opinions. And this shift, though it seems small, starts to echo. Gradually, you realize you no longer need that validation that once felt essential. The invisible gardener tending to your inner garden doesn't work for applause. He cultivates because he loves what he does. And it's in that calmer space, free from constant explanations, that the seed of freedom begins to grow. It's fascinating how human beings are capable of doing incredible things, yet often only feel fulfilled when someone is watching. The problem is that applause becomes addictive. And when it doesn't come, it brings frustration, doubt, even guilt. Stoicism teaches that the value of our actions shouldn't lie in the echo they create, but in the intention behind them. Being the invisible gardener, the one who nurtures even when no one is watching, is one of the highest forms of inner peace. When you do good expecting a pat on the back, your motivation is external, fragile, and fleeting. But when the action comes from the heart, it sustains itself. Want a simple example? Help someone on the street without recording it, without posting about it, without telling anyone. That's freedom. That's mastering your own vanity. And the truth is, when you let go of the need for recognition, you discover that the real reward isn't being seen, it's being whole. Recognition from others is like dessert, sweet, but it doesn't nourish you. Those who live on it end up emotionally underfed. If praise becomes your reason to keep going, then any criticism becomes a reason to quit. A great book that speaks directly to this is The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. It shows how the need for approval is one of the greatest saboteurs of personal freedom. If you haven't read it, add it to your list. And when you break free from that dependency, you begin to act with more lightness. You no longer need to count the likes, tally the applause, or measure your worth in reactions. Life stops being a showcase and becomes a lab for purpose. And then, somewhere in the middle of that process, you start to notice something even deeper. Maybe you're not the one who needs to control everything. The desire to control everything is a trap disguised as responsibility. We think that if we plan every step, avoid every mistake, and predict every reaction, everything will go as expected. But it doesn't. Life has its own rules, and they rarely ask for permission. Stoicism teaches us that we can't control what happens, but we can control how we respond. And that simple shift in focus brings a kind of inner peace no Excel spreadsheet could ever offer. People who are always trying to control the outside world are often the ones afraid of what's happening inside. It's like trying to silence internal chaos by creating external order. But it doesn't work. It's just a disguise. Want a practical exercise to start letting go? Make a list of everything you're trying to control today: people, outcomes, others' decisions, and cross out everything that doesn't depend on you. What's left is where your energy belongs. The rest? Let it go. Trust. Flow. It's liberating to realize that you don't need to be in control of everything to have direction. In fact, the more you try to control, the more frustrated you become. How many times have you tried to force a conversation, rush a result, or convince someone to change? And what did you gain? Probably just emotional fatigue. When we let go of control, life answers with lightness. It's like stopping your struggle against the current and allowing it to take you where you need to be, even if it's not where you thought you wanted to go. And here's the most interesting part. When you let go of control, you begin to reclaim your true power, the power to choose how you'll deal with the unpredictable. It's in that quiet, present inner space that real stoic strength is born. And with it comes a clarity that reveals maybe what's weighing you down isn't what happened, it's what you're still carrying. Holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person feels the pain. It's a well-known phrase, but few stop to reflect on the real weight of it. Resentment doesn't affect the one who hurt you, it affects you. It corrodes from within like rust on old metal. Stoicism shows us that forgiveness isn't about forgetting or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about letting go of what no longer makes sense to carry. When you release resentment, your inner silence becomes a safe place again. And let's be clear, this isn't about reconciliation, it's about liberation. Sometimes you forgive someone and never speak to them again, and that's okay. Forgiveness is about you. It's about taking back control of your life and stopping the cycle of reacting to the past. A simple practice? Write a letter to the person you still feel bitterness toward, but don't send it. Write everything truthfully, then burn it or tear it up. It's a symbolic ritual, but a deeply powerful one to start dissolving what has hardened in you. Many people think resentment is a form of protection, as if keeping it around will somehow prevent future pain. But resentment doesn't protect, it imprisons. It becomes a filter, distorts future relationships, and creates a cycle of distrust that you don't even realize you're in. Letting go of that weight takes courage, but it also brings lightness. And that lightness creates space for something that may have been missing from your life for a long time. Spontaneous joy with no explanation needed. And it's when that inner space begins to clear that you find an opportunity to reconnect with your true self. The part of you that still believes in love, in care, in genuine exchange. And then, with a lighter heart, you come to see an uncomfortable but liberating truth. Maybe the fear of disappointing others is the next thing you need to let go of. Some people go through life carrying an invisible rulebook, trying to follow every guideline others have imposed, rules that often make no sense at all. The fear of disappointing others paralyzes, exhausts, and slowly pushes you further from yourself. You say yes when you want to say no, smile when you feel like crying, and accept what you wish you could question. That erodes inner peace and creates a false sense of belonging, when in truth, it's just submission disguised as kindness. That fear starts early, usually in childhood, when we learn that being loved depends on being pleasing. We grow up trying to keep that logic alive, even when it no longer serves us. Stoicism teaches that living with integrity means honoring your own limits, even if it disappoints someone. And yes, that will happen. You will let people down. You will hear, "Wow, you've changed." And that's okay. Change means you've finally stopped living on autopilot. Overcoming this fear takes practice. Here's a suggestion. Choose one situation each week where you usually shrink yourself. Maybe it's an outing you never really want to go to, a favor you always say yes to, or a conversation you've been avoiding out of fear of conflict. Face it. Speak respectfully, but speak your truth. At first, it feels hard, but soon you'll notice that the people who truly value you understand, and the ones who don't, maybe they never really saw you at all. And when that shift happens, something magical follows. The guilt begins to fade. That inner voice saying you're selfish gets quieter because you realize that taking care of yourself isn't selfishness, it's responsibility. And with that new perspective, something different starts to rise inside you, the desire to truly live as who you are. From an early age, many of us learn that we need to fit in. Whether it's at school, in the family, or at work, the message is clear. Be who they want you to be. And so, little by little, we start shaping ourselves to match expectations, erasing pieces of our essence just to fit into tight spaces. That's where guilt is born. When you start feeling like being yourself is wrong, inconvenient, or too much. But Stoicism comes like a breath of freedom and says, virtue doesn't lie in pleasing others. It lies in living with authenticity, presence, and truth. Guilt is silent, but heavy. It makes you doubt your feelings, question your choices, and live as if you're always owing someone an explanation. Self-knowledge is the antidote. When you allow yourself to look in the mirror with honesty and kindness, you start to see that your flaws don't disqualify you. They make you human. Here's a good exercise. Write down 3 things you've always tried to hide from others, and then ask yourself if they're really flaws, or just parts of you no one ever taught you to love. The truth is, no one is 100% light. Everyone carries shadows, unresolved stories, regrets, but that doesn't make you unworthy of love, respect, or peace. Quite the opposite. When you embrace who you are, with everything that comes with it, control stops being a mask and becomes clarity. Clarity to say, this is me and that's okay. It's like taking off a backpack you forgot you were carrying, and the lightness that follows is almost impossible to describe. And then, when that guilt starts to fade, a new kind of freedom rises, the freedom to stop living for others, the desire to take off the masks, to drop the roles, and finally breathe with relief. Because living to meet everyone else's expectations is exhausting, and you deserve so much more than this quiet kind of burnout. Living for others is a trap that looks like virtue. You give, you adapt, you shrink, and at the end of the day, you barely recognize who you are when no one's watching. Society applauds the people pleasers, but never teaches them how to care for themselves. So you end up carrying frustrations, losing your spark, holding on to guilt that was never yours to begin with. Stoicism shows us that the path to freedom doesn't run through performance, it runs through presence. Those who live with integrity don't need an audience. They need courage. This isn't about turning your back on the world. It's about stopping the habit of hiding from yourself. Living for others is like wearing a costume every day, even when it's tight, uncomfortable, or doesn't suit you. And the wildest part? Most of the people you're trying to please don't even notice the effort. Or worse, they expect even more. That's why setting clear boundaries is essential. Saying this, I won't accept, is healthier than pretending everything's fine. In the long run, that's what protects your peace. Want a practical step? Grab a pen and paper and write, what do I do today just to maintain others' approval? It might sting a little, but it will bring clarity. And from there, choose one of those behaviors to change. It can be something simple, like no longer replying to messages instantly just to seem available. The world won't fall apart if you start putting yourself first once in a while. And here's the surprising part. It starts to respect you more once you begin respecting yourself. And as this new posture settles in, something interesting begins to shift. You talk less about your plans because you realize your energy is far too valuable to be exposed to eyes that don't understand where you're going. There's a quiet strength in keeping your plans to yourself. It's not secrecy out of fear, it's protection out of wisdom. When you share your goals too early, you run the risk of being contaminated by other people's doubts, unnecessary comparisons, and judgments disguised as advice. Stoicism teaches that true control lies in action, not in announcement. Speaking less about what you're going to do and focusing more on actually doing it is an exercise in focus and maturity. A lot of people believe that talking about their plans creates motivation, but more often than not, it does the opposite. You expose yourself, feel pressured, lose spontaneity. Worse, your energy starts to scatter. A classic example, that person who spends months telling everyone they're going to write a book, but never writes the first page. Talking might soothe your anxiety for a moment, but doing is what brings transformation. Inner peace is born when you start producing in silence, without seeking the spotlight. Here's a practical tip. Try applying this strategic silence rule. Only share your plans with those who can directly help you achieve them. Everyone else? Keep it private, guarded, protected. That's not selfish, it's clarity. It's knowing that not everyone will root for you, and that's okay. You don't need a cheering crowd. Your journey doesn't depend on applause, it depends on persistence. And those who build with consistency eventually harvest in silence and surprise everyone out loud. And when this posture becomes habit, the past stops being an obstacle, because you realize you no longer need to relive old stories just to justify where you are now. The present starts to matter more than any old chapter. Revisiting the past can feel therapeutic, but there's a fine line between reflection and entrapment. Some people live as if they're rewatching the same episode of pain and regret, day after day, and that's exhausting. Stoicism is clear. The only time we have any real control over is now. Reliving the past doesn't change what happened. It only delays what could happen. While the mind insists on going backward, the present is quietly slipping through your fingers. It's natural to feel guilt over wrong choices or resentment for what others did to you. But staying stuck in that mental loop doesn't fix anything. It only deepens the suffering. A practical exercise. Choose one past event that still haunts you and write down what you learned from it. Not what you lost, what you learned. That simple shift flips a switch. It moves the focus from pain to wisdom. That's self-awareness in action. And there's more. Those who keep looking back tend to stumble in the now. Comparing yourself to your past self can be just as cruel as comparing yourself to others. I used to be more excited. Back then I was braver. I wasn't like this. These thoughts only drain your energy. But when you ground yourself in the present, you realize you don't have to be who you were or who others expect you to be. You can simply be, and that simply is anything but simple. The truth is, the silence of the now is far more powerful than the screams of what's already gone. It's in the now that you rebuild, find strength, and reclaim peace. And maybe, just maybe, by getting to this point, you've already begun to realize how many quiet habits were sabotaging your inner calm without you even noticing. Now that you know the 12 habits that have been stealing your inner peace, here comes the most important part. What are you going to do with this? Will you keep over-explaining, living to please, and reliving what should have already become wisdom? Or will you choose the silence that heals, the control that frees, and the presence that transforms? Because in the end, no one else can do this for you. The decision is yours, every single day, in every moment. Which of these habits did you realize has been sabotaging you the most? Which one are you ready to let go of today? Drop it in the comments. That's your first step toward taking command of your own mind. And if this video helped you in any way, share it with someone who also needs to break free from these invisible patterns. Sometimes the right sentence hits at exactly the right moment and changes everything. And hey, this is just the beginning. If you want to keep walking this path of clarity, self-awareness, and practical Stoic wisdom for real life, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because here, we don't just talk theory, we show you how to live these teachings with lightness and truth. The next step is already waiting for you. The question is, will you take it?